Right, good afternoon everyone. We'll make a start, the Huddersfield Planning Committee. Item 1, membership of the committee. I understand we've got some substitutes today. Councillor
He's not a substitute.
Councillor Sokol.
Yeah, it's an apology from Councillor Sheikh Allah. Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm filling one of the Liberal Democrat vacancies. The other one is apologies.
Thank you. Item 2, minutes of previous meeting. Somebody prepared to move?
Can I just, let me find it, bring up on page 5, under 16, where it says resolve that the consideration of the application be deferred. I'm sure I mentioned transport as well on there, and it's not in the minutes.
We're just double checking. I didn't have that down as a specific issue for officers to look at, but we're just checking now. It was the two issues that we had down was in relation to bird strike and the materials, and officers haven't, I think, looked at highways.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor. You did raise that as an issue, and we did discuss about the impact on the highway network, but the resolution from committee was to go away and look at the bird strike issue and to look at the materials, but you did raise it, but the resolution was slightly different from those 3 points to 2 points.
So now is somebody prepared to move the minute? Move Councillor Sims. Seconded. Councillor Walker. Those in favour, please show. Item 3, interests and lobbying. Councillor Belham.
Thank you, Chair. Page 131, page 159 and page 175. I'm a member of Home Valley Parish Council, but don't take part in any of their planning discussions.
Home Valley Parish Council, to which I have not on the Parish Council Planning Authority, and as yet I've had no contact with anybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Page 131, page 159, page 175. Because these 3 applications have been going on for some time, I've had contact from both parties on either side of these applications, and I've given no advice. Thank you.
Sokol.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I want to declare an interest on 2 applications, Clayton Field on page 43 and 63. Yeah. The reason I'm declaring interest, I have been heavily involved in this application, both within the Clayton Field Action Group and the applicant being for the last couple of years. So taking into account that my heavily involvement in this, on this issue, I think I should not take part on board on debate and taking on board as well. So I'm not leaving the room. I stay in here. I'll listen, and but I won't be taking part in there. I will be abstaining. Thank you.
So by that, Councillor Sokol, you will be abstaining. Yeah. Thank you.
None, Chair. None.
Councillor
Yeah, lobbying, page number 199, application 91286. I've been contacted by the applicant and somebody I believe was the design person who's done the design work on the application. They didn't provide them with any advice, but obviously I've referred the application to the committee so we could undertake a site visit. And then page 187, application 90827. I've not spoken to the applicant this time about the application, but I can recall that they've contacted me in the past, I believe, the previous time they submitted an application. So I didn't give any advice on either time, but just for clarity that I have, I believe, spoken to them in the past.
Thank you. Councillor.
None, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Pinnock.
None, Chair.
I've just to mention the fact that I'm on Meltham Town Council and page 101, but I'm not on the planning committee. I've had no dealings with it whatsoever.
This is okay. You can hear all right? Okay. Yeah. Okay, we just have to accept it. There's a bit of feedback until...
Right, item 4, admission to the public. Well, they're here. Yes, welcome. Item 5, deputations and petitions. Item 6, public question time. I understand we have a question.
Thanks, Chair. Can the Planning Authority please tell me why developers are being allowed to start on site before planning conditions have been discharged? Thank you.
I think that the response is they're not being allowed to start on site. Developers are implementing their planning permissions under their own engines, under their own auspices. They do have pre-commencement conditions to discharge. They are required to discharge those. As a planning authority, we accept discharge of condition applications, but we do recognise that some developers do start before those conditions have either been discharged or, even worse, haven't been applied for in the first instance. The local planning authority is tasked with planning enforcement matters to ensure developments are in compliance. It is about harm and about the if developers start, what is the impact of that on whatever the issues are that they're in breach of, drainage, highways, for example, and the harm that's necessitated from that. The Council has an enforcement strategy to deal with planning enforcement across all ranges of breaches of planning control. So I wouldn't say that it is that the Council is allowing developers to start. They are making that decision unilaterally. But in terms of Council taking planning enforcement action, and perhaps more robustly than members would like, then that is something that the planning enforcement strategy can look at as a starting point. I hope that assists.
Do you wish to come back, Councillor Patrick?
Yeah. Planning, the officers are aware there are a number of sites in Home Valley South, a number of sites with different developers, which have been started, which have caused harm, which have resulted in complaints being raised by residents, complaints being raised by ward councillors, and the reaction or by the enforcement section has been extremely slow. and that in itself has caused more harm. And I would like some feedback from the planning authority that, and when I say the planning authority, I don't just mean the officers, I mean committee as well, that reassurances that in future this won't be allowed to happen, and that robust action will be taken against developers who start early without conditions being agreed and discharged and cause harm to neighbouring properties. Thank you.
I assume I speak for all members when we do say that we want to ensure that developments are carried out in compliance with their planning permissions. The planning enforcement section works proactively to try and help developments come back into compliance. I acknowledge what you're saying, Councillor Patrick, about the speed of action, and that is something that the planning enforcement strategy could look at with the portfolio holding members. I do think, as a general approach, we are about to notify developers of our intention to ensure that developments do carry out in compliance with their planning conditions. We cannot stop people starting on site if they start, but if they are causing harm, as we have done recently, we can issue temporary stop notices where we are able to demonstrate that harm exists. So I hope that gives some more comfort of our intentions to move forward, but it is part of a planning enforcement strategy as opposed to as an ad hoc basis on site by site.
No doubt, Councillor Patrick, you'll keep us informed, or certainly keep the officers informed of any further misappropriations. Thank you. Item 13, local planning appeals.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Teresa Harlow, Development Management Team Leader. There are 7 applications to report to committee this meeting. One of those matters is actually in Peak Park Planning Authority, but is within Kirklees Council, and that's the one at Royd Magdalen Road at Meltham, which was dismissed for a barn conversion. Of the others, the other 6 were dismissed apart from one element of the application at 2.4, which was 688 Bradford Road, where a porch was allowed, but the remaining part of the application was dismissed in accordance with the officer's reason for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Now we move on to the planning applications, and the first one is the Clayton Fields, Edgerton, page 43.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Giles Cheetham. I'm a council officer dealing with public rights of way matters. The 2 public rights of way reports to the subcommittee today are not actually planning applications. The first report concerns applications that have been made to the council claiming the existence of public footpaths over land at Clayton Fields, Edgerton. Reports concerning public rights of way matters at Clayton Fields have been before members of this subcommittee numerous times recently, and a site visit occurred prior to the previous officer report on DMMO application 183. Officers would refer members to the report and the recommendation, which is that in relation to DMMO applications 30, 31, 184, 185 and 186, that public footpath rights have been at least reasonably alleged to subsist over the routes shown in Appendix Z. Whereas officers recommend refusal of application 187 as the evidence before members is considered to be insufficient regarding the claim that definitive public footpath 345, which just for clarification, looking if to follow the cursor, this route that comes up the western part of the site is Huddersfield public footpath 345. The evidence is insufficient regarding the claim that this public footpath should be recorded with a greater width. Thank you, Chair.
Apparently we're having problems with the communication network.
Jonathan Adamson.
Would you? Well,
okay, do I start? Right. Okay, I'm Jonathan Adamson. I'm the chair of Claytonfield Action Group, chair, committee. The routes on Appendix Z, which were not submitted by the applicants, so the routes on Appendix Z before you were not submitted by the applicants. The rights-of-way inspector directed Kirklees Council to determine claimed right-of-way 183 no later than 3 months after the 22nd of November 2017. The 183 route on Appendix Z is not the application route. The walked 183 route is heavily used and clearly visible. I assume the committee have walked the footpath route of 183. As already stated, the application routes of 30, 31, 184 and 185 also do not match those shown on Appendix Z. Closer approximations are recorded on the site plan prepared by the Kirklees Public Rights of Way Unit on the 15th of January 2018 for the committee meeting on the 22nd of February 2018. An order endorsing the route shown on Appendix Z as Public Rights of Way will continue to evade the inspector's direction to determine claimed right-of-way 183 and, consequently, to determine the footpath route applied for, used for as long as anybody can remember. Finally, I would like to draw your attention to something absurd. The cartographer of Appendix Z shows the combined routes of claimed rights-of-way 30, 31, 184 and 185, passing directly through the listed Victorian tram shelter on Edgerton Road. You won't be able to
30 seconds.
But it's there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike Woodward.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Mike Woodward. I'm chair of the Marsh Community Forum. The forum has long taken an interest in the issue of Clayton Fields. I really want to support the assertion just made by Jonathan. What I've got before me here are two maps, both taken from the council website. This one is dating from 2014, and this one is produced more recently. It's the one that you're being asked to decide upon today. The concern here is the difference. These are the claimed public rights-of-way. The claimed public rights-of-way, incidentally, that the Planning Inspectorate has ordered this council to consider and has said that the council should have considered these claimed public rights-of-way because the claims go back more than 20 years. So that order was issued in November, and that's why we're sitting here today. So my question is, why have you been given a different map with different footpaths on them? I really don't see how you can decide on this because you've been given incorrect information. Thank you very much.
Yes, he'll give you an answer once you've finished.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Should I also refer to the paper that was handed out? Oh, is that next one? Okay. Right, okay. Members will be aware that the report that was presented in February and the report that's today under item 14, there are a large number of of appendices on those reports. There is a difference between some plans and other plans. That is very clear and accepted, but there's also a good reason why there's a difference between some plans and any plans and other plans. Now then, in the appendices, there are each individual witness's evidence form plan that they have filled in. So all of those are there, and all of those were there in the February committee. There are aerial photographs, and there are also the alignment of the application routes. The first plan that Mr Woodward just referred to is a plan of the application routes. So that is the plans that were put in. So if you just bear with me a second while I bring up the correct folder. There we go. Okay, so those are the application routes. So down here you see there's DMMO at 30, 31, 183, 184, 185, 186, 187. Applications 30 and 31 were made in the mid-1990s by Mr McGee and jointly with Mr Hardy, who has since sadly died. The other applications, 183 through to 187, were made by Mr Adamson, who's just spoken to committee. Application 183 was decided at the February committee. That was what the report in the February committee was. So that application has been decided. Mr Adamson sought a direction from the Secretary of State to the Council to determine the application. So the decision that was made in February was a decision on application 183. So the Council has satisfied the direction of the Secretary of State for application 183. Okay, so that's in relation to that.
On an also submitted map, it's quite clear what the 183 is.
Let the officer finish, please. You've had your turn. Thank you.
Charles is appointed, recognising group. It's been out there.
You won't be quiet, I'll have you sort it out.
A number of points have been raised. I will try and cover all of the points that have been raised, including the question about the difference in the alignments. Right? I'm just trying to work my way through the various points that have been raised here. In relation to the other 6 applications which are before members today, Mr McGee has made a further application for direction to the Secretary of State, asking the Secretary of State to determine applications 30 and 31. That request has been made. Mr McGee has made those representations to the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State has asked for the Council's observations, which officers have given, and we have not yet received a decision as to whether they're going to direct us. Now, the report 14 before members today is the decision that we would be directed to make. So whatever the decision is, yes, no, maybe, whatever, once the Council has made that decision, that would satisfy the direction that is yet to be given. So we may or may not be directed to do that. When replying to the Secretary of State, officers said, if the Secretary of State is minded to direct the Council to make a decision, then we asked them to give us a reasonable period to do so, and we said 6 months. Today, if the decision is made on item 14, that will be a long way inside the 6 months that we have suggested. So that is in regard to the Secretary of State. If any party wishes to write to the Secretary of State or make any points to the Secretary of State about the Council's actions, then obviously they are very welcome to do so. and we will continue to communicate with the Planning Inspectorate Office, which works on behalf of the Secretary of State for DEFRA, as we have done before. So that's the matter in relation to this. So officers' view, and obviously these reports go through quite a number of eyes before they reach members, is that the decision that was made in February already by this committee and the decision that is asked today on item 14 would satisfy and deal with all the applications. Now, if we move on to the question of the difference of the routes. Now, with regard to 183, again, I would reiterate that 183 has already been determined by this committee in February, right? But in relation to 183, because it's been mentioned again and because there may be some lack of clarity there, let me assist on that. Mr. Adamson, the applicant, identified that the route in his application was indicative, right? He identified that himself. At 11:30 on the 13th of December 2017, I met Mr. Adamson as the applicant and Mr. McGee as the applicant and other members, local residents interested and concerned about Clayton Fields with regard to the trodden route. Okay, now then, the route that is on the screen that you can see, right, let's have a look. Right.
You can get rid of that bit as well if you click on that.
Yeah, let me see that. So in relation to this route here, this is the route here. Now that is the application 183. Now, unfortunately, I don't have it on the screen, but I have a comparison here, which is between the route that was decided in February and the route that was actually in Mr. Adamson's application. When we met on site in December, it was to identify the route that Mr. Adamson was actually claiming, as opposed to the route that he submitted in his application plan. Now, the application plan is in the appendices, as it was in the appendices in so here we go. So these are the actual application plans filled in by the applicants. Okay, so there is 183. There is route 183.
That's not okay. That's okay, so you should bear in mind that...
Please. Can I?
There is no you cannot. Well, excuse yourself. It will simply go straight to the inspector. Excuse yourself.
Can I? Thank you, Chair. Can I just identify that down here you'll see that part of this is blanked off. This is Mr. Adamson's signature, which is blanked off because we generally don't copy signatures. These marks here are the marks made by Mr. Adamson. This is his application. This route here is actually halfway up the banking. So that's between the water running in the dike and the field. So, Chair, if I may. This is a combination. The black route is the route applied for 183, and the dashed route is the decision that was made in February regarding the route. This is a photograph from 2006. The yellow route is Mr Adamson's plain route. The route that was decided by members is a route through the field which can be seen on the aerial photograph to 2006. That is a montage of two pieces of information which are both shown in the appendices to the report, all of which were put on the Council's website last week. The Appendix Z, bringing us back to this question, the Appendix Z is the recommendation of officers after investigation into this matter. The route that was brought before members in February that was recommended was different from the application route. The reason that it was different from the application route is because the application route, i.e. the route marked on the plan in the application by the applicant, was across the sloped wooded bank and was identified in the meeting to officers in December 13th that it was not the route that they had walked, it was not the route that they wished to be recognised.
Right, we'll continue. Well, I'll suspend the meeting temporarily. And I hope people will acknowledge the fact that it's because of one person there. It's very selfish, and he got to have his way. Well, I'm afraid that's not how you get your way. You get it by persuading people, not shouting and bawling. Thank you.
Chair, I think at this moment in time we should defer this application for further consultation between officers, councillors on the committee and also the public that's representing it, as from the point of view, and I'm speaking I think for most of us on the bench here, things are very unclear and we want to make sure that the right decision is made. So therefore we're asking for it to be deferred and brought back at a later date when we've all been briefed on it properly and then brought back to the committee.
Yeah.
Councillor Walker.
Yes, could I just support what Councillor Sims has just said? I think we are not in a position as a committee to make a sensible, reasoned decision because of the confusion around things.
Well, if that, and it does appear to be the majority, I'll have a show of hands on that, then move deferment. All those in favour? Thank you. Here, can we also defer 15? Because it's more or less the same matter. So, once again, pros and second, all in favour? All those, right. Thank you. That's the.
Can I just say, members have find themselves not in a position to make an informed decision. There is a very full report. In order to assist members before the next meeting, how would you like to be briefed so that the issues and everything can be clarified? Do you want another meeting to go through the report with the Pro officer? Can you make any other suggestions about how you would like to be briefed in advance of the next meeting?
Councillor Sim.
Yeah, Chair, I think we should have a special meeting with the panel at a time to be agreed, so we can go through it with officers and the panel before a said meeting date is set. And that will give us proper time and the time and place to either walk it, check it out, and whatever needs to be done. Thank you. So, members of the Planning Committee, Huddersfield Subcommittee, would like a private session prior to the next Huddersfield meeting so that the whole issue can be aired and explained. No, prior to then.
That's final then. We'll move on. Item 16, page 73.
Good afternoon. My name is Rebecca Drake and I'm the case officer for this application. Members will recall this application from the previous committee meeting. It is a full application for 19 dwellings on land to the south of Swallow Lane in Gorka. The site layout is shown on the slide above. The proposed development comprises 15 detached and 4 semi-detached properties laid out around an area of public open space. The development would be accessed from Swallow Lane. 12-metre-high protective cricket fencing will be installed on the eastern boundary of the site with the cricket pitch. Members visited the site before the previous committee meeting. The application was deferred for 2 reasons. Firstly, members sought more information in relation to the risk to ecology by birds getting stuck in the cricket netting. Secondly, members wished for officers to enter into discussions with the developer in relation to the use of natural stone on the site. In relation to the bird strike issues, the specification of the netting has been submitted and reviewed by the Council's ecologist. He states that the netting would be made of a thick enough cord to make it visible to birds, and that the mesh size is large enough to allow smaller birds to pass through that fly closer to the ground. Larger birds tend to be flying higher and wouldn't need to pass through the mesh. As such, there are no concerns from the Council's ecologist in relation to bird strike. In terms of the proposed materials, and this is since the publication of the update. The developer has offered to provide natural stone on plots 1 and 2, which are these properties here, the ones closest and most visible from Swallow Lane. The remainder of the proposed dwellings will be constructed from artificial stone, with the areas of render, the cream-coloured render, as shown on the plan as was previously put forward at the last application. So these 2 plots here, which would be the ones most visible from Swallow Lane, would be purely natural stone, so they wouldn't have the render on there either. So the developers also undertaken analysis of the area and note that there's no predominant building material. They state that they surveyed 345 properties and the most common building material is brick, followed by natural stone and then artificial stone. So I've just got a couple of pictures just to show the variety of materials within close proximity to the application site. So these are the properties of Swallow Lane that back onto the site. They're constructed from natural stone. We've got these properties on the opposite side of Swallow Lane, opposite the entrance to the site, and they're constructed from artificial stone. These properties are the properties of Woodroyd, and Woodroyd is located to the north of Swallow Lane, so we've got a combination of brick, cladding and stone. And then this is another one from Woodroyd, which is also constructed from brick. So the developers has provided this picture, which is the proposed artificial stone that's set against the proposed natural stone. The developer also wishes to highlight the additional build costs associated with the use of natural stone throughout the site, and states that using this would mean the scheme would only be viable with no affordable units. Officers consider that the proposed mix of natural and artificial stone would not be harmful to visual amenity. In summary, it's considered that the proposed development represents a sustainable form of development. The application is therefore recommended for approval in accordance with the recommendations set out in the report. Thank you.
Andrew Martin.
Right, thank you, Chair. Just want to briefly touch on the 2 items that about the natural stone and the fencing, and then actually refer to something we thought was going to be discussed in more detail, and that's highways. We understand what the nature of the different building materials in the area, but I think it was Councillor Walker who mentioned last time about the character of the village of Oka. This site can be viewed from a number of other areas in the Combe Valley, particularly from Bolster Moor, and it's actually the aspects on the western and southern sides which are visible, not necessarily just from Swallow Lane. And there is a concern about development in the village actually affecting the character. There might not be anything we can do with in terms of planning policy, but it is a concern for local residents, and I would hope it would be a concern for the committee in the future. I think the major issue about the fencing that local residents has is about whether it was going to there was going to be an impact to residents with the cricket matches going on. I think the cricket club has satisfied itself. It's done as much as possible to make sure that people are aware of what goes on there and take what it says in the report about bird strike. It's disappointing that we haven't had a chance to look more at the highways issues. If you look at page 89 of the report, paragraph 10.3.8, it says that improvements, basically highways improvements should be undertaken to mitigate safety, improve safety. And development should only be prevented or refused if transport grounds where residual community impacts of the development are severe. And we believe, those of us who live in the area, I mean, I'm walking that route daily or cycling that route daily at the moment, believe that this development will have a significant impact on highway safety on Swallow Lane. Brook Lane, Laymore, Scar Lane, all of those roads, there was no significant highway safety issues until there was. All of a sudden there's an accident, and then we have to put traffic calming measures in, roundabouts and stuff and things like that. I've been a witness particularly to an accident on Brook Lane, and we believe that this development will negatively impact on highway safety Swallow Lane. We do not, as residents, think we ought to wait until there's too much traffic going on, a car pulls out at the wrong time and there's an accident before we do this, do something about it. There will be a cumulative impact of this development on highway safety in the village of Gurkha.
30 seconds.
Thank you, Chair. It's not just this 19 development. This development will be a gateway to the other fields to the west and south of this area. It's going to be looking at not just 19 dwellings, but up to 100. All that will have an impact and we wish that those issues, we would have hoped that those issues would have been addressed, and we would ask that the committee refuses this application on highway safety grounds. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Jonathan Ainley, speaking on behalf of the applicant, Jones Homes. As discussed, the application was deferred at the March meeting for consideration of the potential bird strike issues relating to the protective netting and respective materials. Given this, I'd like to primarily focus on these matters and the progress made since. In regards to the cricket netting, we've now provided technical specifications. As you've heard, the Council's ecologist has confirmed there are no issues with potential bird strike. Members will recall the submitted information on the effectiveness of the netting with regard to ball strike was previously reviewed by Sport England and cricket's governing body, the ECB. Both have confirmed that the netting is a suitable mechanism to ensure an appropriate relationship between the club and our development. It is used at cricket clubs across the district and beyond. Following deferral, Jones Homes has given detailed consideration of the proposed materials and the existing mix of materials in this part of Golka. The properties examined, less than 1/3 are constructed from natural stone, with almost half constructed from brick and a quarter from artificial stone. As such, there is no dominant material in this location. Jones Homes, as you've seen on screen, intends to use a high-quality artificial stone across the majority of the site, which has been approved by the Council and used on recent developments in Denby Dale, Meltham and Skelmanthorpe. Given the mix of materials locally, we welcome officers' views that the proposed materials are therefore in accordance with policy requirements. Jones Homes have committed to the delivery of 3 affordable units on this site in the form of starter homes. Despite the Council and their external consultants agreeing with our viability appraisal, which demonstrated this would render the development only marginally viable. The use of natural stone would increase costs by in excess of £108,000, and on top of the affordable homes commitment and provision of on-site public open space would mean the scheme is financially unviable and would not be delivered. Notwithstanding this, we have continued to work with the Council and we are able to offer the front 2 plots, which front onto Swallow Lane in natural stone, as you've heard. In addition to providing much-needed housing, the development would also deliver significant economic benefits in terms of investment and jobs throughout the construction phase, new homes bonus payments and additional council tax receipts. As there are no outstanding matters of ecology, highways as confirmed by officers, or other technical matters, and following provision of further information in respect to the points of deferral, we hope members will now be able to support the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Members. Councillor Bellamy.
Thank you, Chair. I'm perfectly happy now with the fencing. I do still have concerns about the materials, and it is from the views from Bolster Moor, because, like I say, it's quite open and you can see that. I've still got real concerns over highway safety. Swallow Lane is absolutely awful for driving up. There's a lot of traffic, it goes up over Scape. I mean, even as ward councillors for Combe Valley, we've been looking at the junction of Swallow Lane and Slades Road because we've got problems there with sweeping traffic round. So I have really got concerns, and I would hope that some highway safety something could be done.
Councillor Sokol.
Chair, when we deferred this application in March, we did not defer it to ask the agent or applicant to justify why he can't use the natural stone. Now, he still says he's justifying the high quality of artificial stone. We did not ask artificial stone. We defer it to the application that we asking for natural stone. We still should stick with that. Thank you.
So, you got your hand up? Yes. Yes, Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you, Chair. Although I know this site reasonably well, I'm not a local, so I'm looking at it from principles, if you like. And some of the points that Mr. Marchington made are ones that I think we need to take into consideration, and that is to do with cumulative impact. Really, planning, I think, finds it very difficult to deal with cumulative impact. I suppose this is where the SIL will perhaps do something to help. But it does seem to me that a development on this site will not materially add to the traffic, as is referred to in the report, but following subsequent developments, that may happen. And it just depends at what point you can say, well, we ought to do something about this in order to deal with the problems caused by increasing traffic. And one of those is public transport, and knowing the roads in and around Gold, because some of them are extremely narrow. Public transport is actually quite difficult. It's challenging, but nevertheless ought to be dealt with properly. I note that this has been deferred mainly for the netting and the materials. I think the materials, it would be a good thing if natural stone was used on this site because of the way it's on a hillside and will be viewed from other areas. Whether we can insist on that is another matter entirely. In the end, we can insist all we like, but if we then that results in refusal, then that would have to be tested on appeal. So I'm not necessarily going that far, but I do think we should ask for natural stone, because I think it enhances the area, frankly.
The officer wishes to come here and make some comments.
Thanks, Chair. I do hear what you're saying, committee, and I think it's important to say from the resolution of last committee, when we met with the agent, that was exactly the question we asked. Can we have it all to be natural stone? Because that's what the members have said. Their response was as set out today, with an analysis to respond to why they think it wasn't appropriate. Now, officers have made an initial recommendation on materials. The developers moved a bit, certainly on 2 key plots. Is that enough in terms of materials for members? That's the question before you today now. That's their position. We've asked them to go back again. They've given us a final position on that. I didn't want to talk about highways too much because it wasn't part of the reason it was deferred, but I do hear what residents are saying. It is important to acknowledge, in terms of the direction of travel, this is an emerging allocation as part of the local plan. So cumulative highway impacts are taken account when that local plan is prepared. And as you say, in the report, councillors, they have looked at the amount of traffic this site generates and have made an assessment of that, but it wasn't what we went away to look at this time. The issue was materials. I just think it isn't fair to say we didn't try and secure all stone. We made that point, but the applicants have come back with their case. It's now for members to decide whether they, on the merits, think that is acceptable or not.
Yeah, and if I could just add the fact that to lose the 3 affordable homes for the difference in the look, and the look is hardly noticeable. I do believe we should have those affordable homes, and so in that respect, I believe we should actually vote in favour of this. But I'll leave it to somebody prepared to make a proposal. I'll move officer's recommendation. That's seconded, Councillor Homewood. All in favour, please show. Against?
Application
Abstentions?
approved.
Page 1.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Adam Walker. I'm the case officer on this application. Our members considered this application for 19 dwellings on Millmore Road at the previous committee and resolved to approve it in line with the officer recommendation. So as a reminder, this is the site here off Millmore Road, sloping down towards the back at the back, and there's a planning permission for 16 dwellings on this field to the front, which members have previously considered and approved. Since the committee resolution, an issue has come to light in relation to the gradient of the internal estate road. So it's this section of road in the site. It was deemed to be too steep, and that would prevent it from being adopted, and so officers went back to the developer to lessen the gradient from 1 in 8 to 1 in 12. Now the impact of this is twofold. Firstly, the height of some of the plots has had to be raised in order that they tie in with the new road. It's probably best shown on this section. So the dash line at the bottom shows the existing ground level, and then the new road is going to have to be at a higher level than what was previously approved. So some of the plots have had to step up just to reflect that. That dash line on the end, that shows an approved house on the neighbouring site. You can see that it's still, even though some of these houses have had to come up, they still sit comfortably within that layout. The second impact is in relation to the cost to construct the development. This has gone up principally because of the extra fill that's now required on the site. So this has resulted in a change to the viability appraisal, and that's the reason the application's brought back before committee today. So as I said, the visual impact, officers accept that. It's not considered to be overly significant. Dwellings would, well, some of the plots would come up by between about half a metre and just over 2 metres, but given that it's a sloping site, that can be accommodated quite comfortably. The applicant submitted additional viability information that addresses the extra costs involved. That information has been independently assessed by the same company that looked at the original viability appraisal. And the conclusions are that the development is no longer viable with the previous Section 106 offer, which was £82,500 towards off-site affordable housing. The development's now only viable without any contributions. Officers have no reason not to accept the independent advice, and in the circumstances, the recommendation is to approve without the affordable housing contribution. Thank you, Chair.
Members. No one wishes to speak. Is that seconded? Seconded, Councillor. All those in favour, please show. Against? 3. Abstain.
Application's approved.
Next application, Somerset Road, Almonbury, page 119.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, members visited this site this morning. It's a former domestic garage site, which you can see on this aerial photograph. It's now been cleared. It's 2 rows, 2 blocks of garages. There's protected trees along the site frontage and an area of protected woodland to the northwest of the site. There's a public right-of-way running through the site, which you can just about see on this picture, that then links through to Almonbury Bank over here. Now, the applicant is Donaldson's Vets, who are currently based down the road at Langley Park Golf Club, and who also have a number of satellite surgeries around the district. The proposal is for a purpose-built veterinary hospital that would take in theatres, consulting rooms, offices, training room, laboratory and staff facilities. This is a site plan for the development. Be mainly 2 stories in height, with a part basement on this side, so this elevation will be 3 stories, and it'll be 2 stories to the road. Got quite a large car park to the front, 39 spaces, and access will be off an existing mini roundabout, creating a 4th arm. Space within the site for the existing public right-of-way to be retained, and there will be some works to improve that and ensure it remains continuous. There'll be a landscape buffer to the roadside that would incorporate some of the existing protected trees. This is a 3D visual showing what the building would look like. Got glazing to the top, which wraps all the way around the building. 2 large glazing panels that break up that wall in at the front, and entranceway just here. It's just another view of the front. Proposed materials are a light grey brick, which you can see on that image, and a grey concrete tile. Officers, as stated in the report, have some reservations with that grey brick, and the applicant has confirmed that he's willing to consider alternatives. Officers feel that a mixture of stone and render would be acceptable. The core hours of the business are 7:30 in the morning till 7 at night, Monday to Friday, and 9 till 3 on Saturdays. Premises will also offer a 24-hour emergency care service. In terms of the assessment, the application will support the growth and expansion of this local business, with some additional jobs being created, and so the principle of the development is supported by the MPPF. Officers are satisfied that the impact of the development on residential amenity, nearby protected trees and biodiversity are acceptable, subject to conditions. I'll now just hand over to the Highways Officer to briefly comment on the highways issues.
Through you, Chair. Ryan Kinder, Highway Development Management. To summarise the highway section of the report, access is to the site is to be taken off the existing mini roundabout via the 4th arm. An appropriate visibility display will be provided in line with the mini roundabout design standards. There is not considered to be any significant trip rates generated with the AM and PM peak periods due to the nature of the proposed business. The parking provision associated with the development is considered to be acceptable, with 41 spaces in total, including 2 disabled spaces provided. The rear of the car park will be closed off on a Monday morning for refuse collection purposes. Provision for trailer access during lambing season will also provide at this area. There will be no cattle brought to the site. Thank you, Chair.
The recommendation is to approve the application subject to the delegation of authority to officers as set out in the committee update. Thank you, Chair.
Martin Patterson, who's speaking on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you, Chair. Martin Patterson, one of the vets and directors at Donaldson's Vets. Donaldson's Vets is one of the longest established veterinary practices in Yorkshire, and uniquely in Huddersfield is independently owned. For over 100 years, we've served the needs of pet owners, horse owners and farming community. The practice has grown and now employs 116 local staff members. Although we have 6 surgeries across Kirklees and Calderdale, our hospital is essential for more specialised procedures, inpatient management and access to our 24-hour, 365-day-a-year emergency service. Our patient caseload and complexity has increased exponentially, and we've now outgrown our existing site at Maple Street. We're currently unable to recruit the additional staff that our increased workload requires due to our space constraints, and the move to the new hospital will immediately create an additional 8 full-time and 4 part-time jobs. All our staff live and are economically active within the local area, and will maximise the economic benefits during construction by using local tradesmen and suppliers wherever possible. Serving the community is very much at the heart of our practice. Our new hospital will be a smart hospital fit for the 21st century. It will be more prominent and easier to find. We'll have an appointment system to control the flow of patients, and we have bus stops directly outside the site to encourage the use of sustainable transport. We'll have improved car parking with better access, training room for farmer education, modern theatre suite, high dependency unit, state-of-the-art 64-slice CT scanner, and importantly, we have no plans to extend our opening hours beyond those currently at our Maple Street site. Derelict for many years, the site at Somerset Road is an eyesore, with asbestos, fly tipping, fire lighting, drug dealing, and it has become infested with Japanese knotweed. Our proposal is to sympathetically develop the site. We'll deal with the overgrown footpath and improve the amenity for the users. We'll have an avenue of tree planting with native species, integrated biodiversity enhancements to actively encourage bats and birds. Our building will exceed insulation performance requirements. We'll have rainwater harvesting and electrical vehicle charging points, allowing us to convert our vehicle fleet to zero carbon. As part of our application, we've submitted geo-environmental reports confirming that the development is safe and will not cause a problem. Ecology reports showing low impact and biodiversity enhancements that will improve bird nesting and bat roosting opportunities. Lighting will be designed to have minimum impact. Tree reports show that only poor quality specimens will be removed and high quality trees will remain. Our transport report confirms safe access and egress to the site with sufficient car parking. All of these reports have been accepted and agreed by the Council. In summary, after 60 years at our Maple Street Hospital, our proposed development at Somerset Road will sit sympathetically within its surroundings, improve access and facilities for the public, enable further enhancements to our clinical care.
Thank you, we've got it.
Okay, thank you. Did my best. Thanks.
Members. Councillor Ward.
Yeah, I think this development will be positive. I think it's good to see a local business doing well, thriving, and looking at investing in the local community. I do, however, think that, as officers have already recommended, the material that's being used, the brick, is inappropriate, and more appropriate materials such as natural stone should be used. I also think that there needs to be definitely advice and consultation about the planting that's taking place to ensure that the replacement of the trees that are lost, that's compensated for by some high standard planting on the site. And I think if that happens, I think it could be an asset to the community.
Thank you, Chair. I'd first of all like to ask, I don't know whether we can have an answer to this. To what extent is this practice to do with agricultural patients, and what percentage is it small animals, pets? Just to get an idea of the orientation of the work.
I wonder if the applicant could just give us some indication of the percentage.
Because we're talking about sheep on the bus.
So across the practice, we're about 80% small animal, around about 15% farm, and about 5% equine. Although most of the farm work is coordinated from the hospital practice, so there's a heavier bias towards farm and equine work at that site. So it would be closer to something like 60% small animal, 40% farm and equine. We are now the only practice in Kirklees who undertake farm and equine work.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'd like to support the application because I think that it's a good reuse of an existing derelict site, with the safeguards that have already been mentioned about tree planting, and I do think that the white or grey colour frontage is a bit loud, and natural stone or something like natural stone would tone that down a bit. But I'd like to move acceptance of the officer's recommendation.
Just before it's seconded, that yes, it's coming out of the dark, as it were, down where it is at the moment, but I think it's just a little bit too bright at the bottom half. So if that could be stone, as are most of the houses around as well, the bottom half of the houses are stone. but it has been indicated that they would probably agree to that. So we need to include it. Councillor Sims.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with what's been said. It could be clad in stone at the front there rather than build it in stone, but it wants to be natural stone. But yeah, this company is very successful. We need to keep it successful. It's employing people, and it's doing a real good job with the animal kingdom. And I've, over the years, had to use them, unfortunately, but they're brilliant, really are. They're both looking after the pets and the owners of these pets when tragic things happen. So I'm quite happy to support it if we can tone down that front a bit with some stone.
I take it by that, Councillor Sims, you're seconding the motion for acceptance. All those in favour, please show. Right, we're now adjacent to 8 Myrie Lane, Netherthong, page 131.
Thank you, Chair. Victor Grayson, Senior Planning Officer, Majors and Minerals Team. This is an application for full planning permission for a residential development of 21 dwellings at land to the north of 8 Myrie Lane, Netherthong. The site is 1.03 hectares in size and it slopes downhill from north to south. In the unitary development plan, it's allocated as provisional open land. In the emerging local plan, it's allocated for housing. This is a view of the site from Moor Lane. We're obviously looking at the field at the centre of this image. This is a view from further to the south-west from Brown Hill. Land to the north and west of the site is in the Greenbelt. Land to the west is within a wildlife habitat network. The site is not in a conservation area. The Netherthong conservation area covers land approximately 40 metres to the south, and this view is taken from within the conservation area. Again, we're looking at this field behind these dwellings in the mid-ground. The Oldfield conservation area covers land approximately 185 metres to the north. There are no listed buildings on or close to the site. Myrie Lane is narrow and has no pavements. A claimed public right-of-way runs east-west across the site between St Mary's Rise and Myrie Lane. Surrounding properties are in residential use. This picture shows the retaining wall on the site's southern boundary, which is shared with 2 to 8 Myrie Lane. This is a view from the rear garden of 2 Myrie Lane. And this is a view from the first floor rear window of 8 Myrie Lane. This is a view from Myrie Lane looking east across the site towards St Mary's Rise and St Mary's Way. And this is the view from towards the north-east corner of the site from St Mary's Rise. And it's at this point where there's a claimed public right-of-way running from here across the site to Myrie Lane. A tree preservation order covers several trees on the site's western edge on Myrie Lane. Members may recall that in 2015, outline planning permission was refused for 5 dwellings on part of the site, 0.45 hectares of the site. This, however, was then granted at appeal in 2016, and this is an image from that application. The Strategic Planning Committee also resolved to approve outline planning permission for this scheme for 7 dwellings on, again, part of the site, this time 0.61 hectares of the site. However, the Section 106 agreement for that application was not completed and the planning permission was not issued. The proposal is for 21 dwellings in a range of sizes, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 beds. These will be detached, semi-detached properties or arranged in short terraces. 12 unit types are proposed. A serpentine layout is proposed for the site. All vehicular access is proposed from a new entrance on Myrey Lane. Pedestrian connections to St Mary's Rise and Myrey Lane are proposed. On-site public space is proposed along the west side of the site. This would include public open space. In terms of the principle of development and land use, although the site is currently allocated as provisional open land, the previous appeal decision and resolution to grant permission, the current situation regarding housing land supply in Kirklees, and the proposed site allocation together carry a significant weight that justify approval of residential development in this location. The site is on the edge of an existing settlement and is a sustainable location for residential development. In terms of design and conservation, it's considered that Netherthong can accommodate an extension without adversely affecting the character and appearance of the village. The development would effectively round off the northwest corner of the settlement. The proposed development would not harm the settings or significance of the nearest conservation areas. The proposed site layout has much to commend it, with 12 unit types and varied density, and appropriate detailed designs and materials are proposed. All of this would result in a development that would sit well in its context and would be of a suitably high quality. In terms of highways impacts, for the new vehicular access point at Myrey Lane, adequate visibility displays and works to Myrey Lane are proposed. Adequate off-street parking is proposed within the site. Several residents have raised concerns regarding congestion in Netherthong. However, it's not considered that the predicted additional vehicle movements would adversely affect the local highway network, including when considered alongside the additional movements generated by the ongoing Jones Homes development to the east. Officers have, however, asked the applicant to assess the impacts of the development on traffic flows at certain junctions on routes to and from Huddersfield, and no material impacts on these junctions were predicted. In relation to the claimed public right-of-way across the site, the proposed layout allows for east-west access should the claimed public right-of-way be confirmed. The path parallel to Myrey Lane through the public open space would enable pedestrians to avoid at least part of Myrey Lane, which, as noted previously, has no pavements. In terms of neighbour amenity, the development is considered acceptable given the proposed distances between existing and proposed dwellings, changes in levels and soft landscaping. In terms of drainage, the lead local flood authority has advised that the submitted details are acceptable. In terms of ecology, the amended information submitted during the life of the application addresses earlier officer comments, and the development would secure ecological enhancements. In relation to trees, the amended proposals are now sufficiently distanced from protected trees. As with the scheme allowed at appeal, a sycamore tree close to the site's southwest corner would be felled. However, given the proposed replacement tree planting, this is considered acceptable. In terms of the recommended Section 106 agreement, this would cover on-site public open space, affordable housing, and on that point it's recommended that authority be delegated to officers regarding tenures and locations of affordable housing units, bearing in mind the need to pepper pot and the applicant's preference for starter homes. A contribution of £10,000 towards road safety and sustainable travel initiatives for Netherthong has been offered by the applicant. Given that the development would bring new residents, including children, to Netherthong, it's appropriate to raise awareness and provide training in relation to road safety and to encourage sustainable travel amongst these new residents. The recommended contribution passes the 3 tests for planning obligations, and as reported in the committee update, Councillor Patrick has suggested that a larger contribution should instead be secured to fund a village-wide traffic assessment. However, although the applicant is willing to divert the £10,000 contribution as suggested by Councillor Patrick, as the proposed obligation is not necessary to make the development acceptable, it fails to meet the relevant tests and cannot be secured in connection with this application. Objections from occupants of 48 properties have been received to date, including the most recent 2 representations detailed in the committee update. As set out in the committee report, the concerns have been sufficiently addressed by the proposals, by conditions and the proposed Section 106 agreement. Approval of planning permission subject to conditions in the Section 106 agreement is recommended. Thank you.
Councillor Patrick.
All right, thank you, Chair. You've heard the background in 2015 committee refused an application. I'll say committee refused an application to build 5 dwellings on this land due mainly to access and highways, but unfortunately that was overturned on appeal. We now have an application before us for 21 dwellings on the same roads. This becomes, you might say, it grieves me to say it, possibly a damage limitation exercise for residents in the village of Netherthong, in particular in relation to the substandard road network. Netherthong people want to see a village-wide traffic assessment to look at options for improving road safety for vehicles and all pedestrians. The proposed contribution does not go far enough, and if committee want to approve this application, I would ask you to increase the contribution, which is what officers were told, and widen it to include a full traffic assessment. I had put this to officers prior to this meeting, and officers have replied to say such an assessment would not be necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms. However, officers also agree that the contribution of £10,000 before you for a sustainable travel initiative is also not necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms. Netherthong people want to see if a one-way system could work, and they want to see better safety for all pedestrians. This will only happen if money is made available to pay for an assessment and bring forward options. If the developer is prepared to do this, then I can see no reason why it should not happen. If the local plan is approved, other development sites will come forward in Netherthong, and at that stage we will have road improvement schemes that can be funded by Section 106 agreements. We need to improve infrastructure to accommodate all these new houses. This would go a long way to achieving that. Please support me in my support of the people of Netherthong to bring about planning gain to improve road safety in the village. Thank you.
Stuart Brown, who's the applicant. Yep, okay, so that's Claire Parker, Hugill, who's the agent.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee today to talk about this application in greater depth and perhaps give you a greater insight into the design decisions we've undertaken following an extensive and well-informed design process. In beginning the design process, we considered the character of Netherthong and noted the house types and volumes present both in the local village and on the surrounding housing developments. You will notice that this development relates firmly to the local village in including a large mix of housing types, which are all bespoke designs created specifically for this site and location. It was an intentional act to position the smaller units closer to the village centre, which are 2- and 3-storey cottages. As the eye is drawn up the site, we have included detached dwellings and increased space around dwellings with areas of soft landscaping to ensure views through are achieved, and a hard line on the edge of the open areas to the north of the site is not created. We have spent time considering comments gained from the local residents neighbouring the site and have accommodated their comments where reasonably practicable. Subtle design amendments have been incorporated into the scheme following comments from neighbours, and we have also incorporated a pedestrian link from the St Mary's development adjacent to the site through the site to Myrie Lane. With regard to the architectural detailing, we have again referred to local vernacular design by including architectural details such as stone heads, sills, mullions, stone string courses, water tabling, and of course natural stone will be used for the predominant building material of the units. We're committed to creating a high-quality scheme, and the use of good quality natural materials within the scheme are intrinsically linked with the quality product proposed. In terms of the numbers of units, we feel 21 units is an appropriate number on this site. The number of units is under the suggested 30 units per hectare density applied to this site, as is allocated within the emerging local plan, which equates to 25 units. We feel the design process has helped to inform numbers, having given due regard to topography, local vernacular design and the neighbouring conservation areas and surrounding open landscapers on the fringe landscape on the fringes of the village, which all help to inform the character of the site.
30 seconds.
The design purposefully relates to these open aspects surrounding the site by ensuring the density decreases as the topography steepens and the eye is drawn up through the site. We hope that you can follow the officer's recommendation for approval of this application. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Stuart Brown, who's the applicant.
Thank you, Chair, Planning Committee, for allowing me to speak. My name is Stuart Brown, a Director of Yorkshire Country Properties, the applicant. Initially, the company was set up by Dudley Parker, essentially building high-quality homes in South Huddersfield for over 50 years. Claire is our architect, sister the designer. Claire and Emma live locally. They are extremely passionate about Pennine Village design and are the central core of our design team. We only employ local trades and businesses. Typically, our construction resource comes from within a 10-mile radius of our housing projects. Yorkshire Country Properties do not have any standard house types. We design each site on its own merits, so it respects, complements and blends in with its location and surroundings. We endeavour to create a mix of property types. In this case, we're providing one-bedroom properties through to family accommodation. Natural stone is our chosen construction material. Consultation with local people is extremely important to us. We want to understand concerns and mitigate the impact of our designs. I have personally met the local residents surrounding the site, and in some cases, Claire and I have stood in their kitchens and gardens with the residents to understand their concerns. The layout has been amended on many occasions following these neighbourhood meetings. It is our company policy to continue open and positive dialogue with our neighbours on all projects from the planning stages all the way through to final sales. We have consulted with Home Valley Parish Council and presented our scheme to them on the 5th of February 2018. The members voted to support the application subject to highways being supportive, which they are. The Parish Council reasons for support were mainly down to the variety of house types and high quality materials and design. We want to create a positive impact locally and contribute to the Netherthong area. We've incorporated a footpath linking St Mary's Rise and Myrie Lane. We have also offered the additional financial contribution towards highway safety improvements locally. We are supportive of Councillor Patrick's preferred choice of carrying out a village-wide highway assessment. We're in a difficult position here because we're in the hands of the councils of how this will be delivered, but we're more than happy to...
30 seconds.
Thank you. We're prepared, certainly, to complete a traffic assessment along those lines. Yorkshire Country Properties are passionate about high-quality design and build excellence. We genuinely aim to mitigate impact on neighbours and strive to generate a positive impact locally. Given the above, we really hope you're able to support our application. Thank you.
Members. Councillor Sim.
Thank you, Chair. It's a fait accompli, this, really. I mean, we did vote against it when it came early doors, because, as you've seen today, the highways network within the village. However, we couldn't have had a better builder go into this site, and I must say that. I think this company will build units that are conducive to the area and in the right product and the right quality, different to what's happened just near the side of it. So I'm very happy with that. What I'm not happy at is that our officers are not grasping the nettle here to try and do something different. Take this extra money and look and see whether we can or not use this money to get an overview, because we've got a cumulative effect here. We've talked about it once before today, and this is huge. When you go back and look at what you've passed on previous applications for this area, then it's huge. And the amount of traffic coming down those roads is going to get worse. This company is prepared, you've heard, to put extra to 10,000 towards this scheme. Now, come on, guys, let's not be, we should accept this. It's a trial, it's a new thing to do, but having said that, if it works and it gives you value for money later on when these other plans come in, that helps us, saves us costs, etc., and makes these things viable, we should be grabbing it with both hands, not just sitting on the fence. We have to try these things because we all know, in all our areas, we're going to get applications, right, that is going to be, the road infrastructure is not right for them. And we've all got it because it's the topography of Kirklees, unfortunately. So I would like to move that we accept this company's agreement to look to do this scheme. I can see how legal's shaking their head, but you have to look at it. Legals can be overcome. Look at it properly, and I'm quite happy to move it as long as we get that. And I think we're coming to stages now when the local plan will soon be coming forward. We have to grasp these sort of things because in the future, this council will not have the money to put all these things right. And you can't look at it in a blinkered way as which we have done in the past. We need to be futuristic, we need to look into the future, and we need to grab this and make sure. I'm sure the buildings will be right. I have no doubts whatsoever about that. Go and look at some of the things they've built. So I will move if the committee will support me. I know there's heads shaking in the legal grounds and whatever with planning, but there must be ways of looking at it. If this committee says, go and have a look at it, I think they will. And I think it'll be a new venture for this committee that they start to think of the larger picture and not just the narrow picture. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Walker, Councillor Pinnock, and then Councillor Sock.
Yeah, I also support the proposal put forward by Councillor Patrick. I think it is really important that we do look at some of the wider traffic issues in our Pennine villages, such as Netherthorne, where quite a lot of development is taking place. We saw the situation on the planning bus this morning, that there are some real difficulties because there are some real pinch points in a village such as Netherthorne. With the earlier site we were looking at in Gurkha, again there are some quite serious traffic problems. So I would be interested to know what advice we have from officers about the viability of carrying out such an assessment, because I think going forward it is the kind of work that we need to do.
I'm shaking my head here because the suggestion that Councillor Patrick makes is to essentially acquire a pot of money from various developments and apply that for a wider village-wide, Netherthorne-wide traffic assessment. We don't have the policy or legal ability to do that. Well, we're in the process of doing that with SIL. That's exactly what happens with SIL. A certain amount of money is allocated for each kind of development, which can go into a central pot. But at the moment, we don't have it. We are required to take any money from a developer for a legal basis. We can't have money offered and just accept it. We have to satisfy all the SIL tests, not just one. It's not just necessary. It has to be related directly in scale, fairly and reasonably related in scale and kind to the development and directly related to the development. Well, the proposal for this £10,000 in its application, officers consider that does meet the tests, but taking £10,000 just to put in a pot for some future purpose, we don't think does meet the test.
Thank you, Chair. I am generally in support of this application. However, there are issues which Councillor Patrick has certainly emphasised, and I have a great deal of sympathy for what he's saying, because it will not have escaped members' attention that when we went on site, this site is on the edge, on the very edge of the settlement. And any transport assessment will inevitably come to the conclusion that public transport isn't going to work very well in such locations. I think it's got to be part of the solution, but in a case like this, which is definitely a very good development, I certainly agree with Councillor Sims on that point. But in the end, if there is a public transport component to the solution to traffic, then it's got to be explored, and it's got to be funded somehow or other, because otherwise these very narrow roads which exist in large parts of Kirklees, not just the rural south, in other parts as well, the roads are just going to get completely clogged unless we can find some alternative solutions. Cycling maybe, but that isn't necessarily an option in areas like this. So whilst approving of the application, I do think we need to try our hardest and, if you like, anticipate SIL, which I guess won't be approved until the planning inspector to the local plan has reported. So we're looking at some months before we can do something about that. But I think we should have a list of things that we need to do in a case like this, so that once we have got the money or have got the permission to accumulate the money, we know what we want to do with it. So I think what I'm saying is, yes, by all means do the transport assessment, but it needs all types of transport to be taken into consideration.
Councillor Sokol, then Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Chair. It's good to hear from the developer, actually applicant, to hear that he already been in touch with the local people, especially neighbors. He been already consulted, and he prepared to work with Councillor Patrick and his colleagues as well to resolve any issues there with traffic. So I think on this basis, I support Councillor Ken Sims' proposal to move a recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Well, looking at this site, and I did actually trip up there this morning, even though I wasn't on the bus. Nice idea. Trouble is, it's the wrong site. It's in the wrong place. Mary Lane is the width of a car or your average awesome cart. That's a fact. That field there, I don't know how they've managed to squeeze 21 houses in there. They'll probably all shake hands with one another before the end of the day. But the bottom line is, has anybody taken into consideration what the people of Netherthong have to put up with all this building, including the Jones Home situation, whereby Nigel, myself, and Ken Sims have spent a lot of time there sorting problems out, which really shouldn't have been for us to sort out. They should have been sorted out before it happened, but they weren't. And this is another site. This is another site with one at Scholes we're sorting out. It's easy to pass plans and then run away from it and leave it with somebody else, because as soon as these builders move in, they do exactly what they want. Well, I'm not saying that Dudley Parker's people will, but at the end of the day, I was trapped in Netherthong this morning for quarter of an hour. I was trapped. I couldn't get out. It's a Thursday morning, the sun's shining, it's just an ordinary day. Donald goes up to see his daughter and he's trapped. Seriously. And the roads are so narrow you can't even pass two cars. Giles Street, one-way traffic if you're going to make it into a one-way street. It's got to be. So it's the same with Out Lane. There is only one road you can come into and out of Netherthong, and that is Dean Road. But that's a private estate. It now looks a bit like the M62 in an evening. That's not fair on the people who live there. I think before anybody starts shouting about passing plans, building houses, they should talk to the local people, and I mean the people of Netherthong. I don't mean the people that live next door, because they've had enough anyway. I don't know how you get a situation where they say, oh, these people they're fine with it. They're not fine with it. That's why we keep having to go up and sort things out. That's wrong. You know, I mean, we don't mind, but they do take most of your day up. So that's my slant on it. I suppose we can't stop it going through. I don't know whether it's halfway there or not. But this £10,000, it's a mere pea in the ocean. It needs about 5 times that money's put into this to include all those properties that are built in Netherthong. And something's got to be done, else there's going to be total chaos. Thong Lane, let's be fair, that's nearly one way down there. You can't pass 2 cars in some of the places. New Road is blocked up every morning and every night by people parking their cars, fetching the kids from school. And it's a body's job. My daughter plays, she organises the buses on an evening when it gets crowded. She actually does traffic duty. And that's no kidology. And she's fed up of doing that as well, thank you.
If I could just come in here and just say the one improvement that they are making, and I'm just saying one that is on Mary Lane itself. They are going to cut that away to make it wide enough for 2 cars, which is more than needed. But I thought that was a plus. Councillor Sims.
Thank you, Chair. Getting back to this legal complication, if this applicant decides to give the money for X and carries it out, what is the problem? And agrees that we can use it in future to assess things in Netherthong, what's the problem? Surely we've got legal boffins in Kirklees that should be able to sort this out. And I'm sure they can. But there's got to be a will there. And the will from the applicant seems to be there. Let's have the will from the council to be there to make this thing happen. Thank you, Chair.
Just to be clear, we're talking about this one application on this one site and this assessed sum. We can take the £10,000 for road safety initiatives in Netherthong. What we can't do is put it into a general pot for a wide transport assessment. If the applicant wants to go to the community himself outside the application, he can. If he wants to arrange his own traffic assessment for the community, he can. But for us, assessing it as a council, that's what's been through viability, that's the sum that's available, and that's just how we need to apply it currently in terms of the SIL.
Chair, I'd just like to come back on that. I don't think there's a will there that we should do. I think legally that there's a way around this. I'm not a legal entity myself, but I've gone through a lot of things over the years. And this site's going to be developed. I want it to be developed by a responsible builder, which is here. They're being so responsible that they are helping to alleviate some of the problems that are not theirs anyway, which you're talking about. But surely there must be a way. Now, you know, I want this application, if we're all agreed, to be passed with this caveat there that our legal actually gets down to it. Precedents are set every day in this world of legalities, right? It's not from the will of this council has to be there and it can be achieved. I want that will to go forward with this application, right? And
so, Councillor Sims, if I could just...
we are supported by our other members.
If I could just make some sort of a simile here with, well, and I've just mentioned it, Teresa, the fact that Leeds Road, now when anything's done at Leeds Road there is money put to one side for improvements for the future, and perhaps something of that nature, I would have thought, could be... What do you want to do? Come in, Matthias, or do you want...
We're not trying to be difficult with members. I think we want to be very clear. It might feel that that's the impression. It's not. We're officers, we're professional planners, we're here to advise you. Our advice to you is our advice to you and to the room is that we don't think this is a contribution that meets the legal tests. And therefore we can't say to you, yes, we can do this. What we're saying to you is you've got a willing developer out there who's willing to go and speak to the community. Well, there's obviously clearly a dialogue there between developer and community. What you can't do is you have to make decisions within the context of planning law, and decisions on planning law about contributions are set out in the SIL regulations. There is a test, the 122 test, which you have to pass to ensure that development contributions are related to the development, fair and reasonable, and meet the tests in that regard. We can't make that connection for you. We can advise you to say it doesn't. You don't have to accept that advice, but there is another option out there. So I don't think and we have to ensure that we advise you to make robust decisions, both for the applicant, for the council, and to avoid the potential of challenge afterwards. And that's why we're not trying to be difficult, we're just trying to be clear on that point. Sorry, members, to be a bit blunt about it.
We've reached that stage now where I'd like the developer just to have a final word at least, because I think we've given it a good, a really good discussion.
Thanks, Chair. The way I see it, or my understanding, is actually it's the report in an assessment of Netherthong, which is key. And that's a separate report that we're more than happy to complete. And we want to have a positive impact on the wider community. So this is something that we want to try and deliver. In the statement that came out last night, the contribution of £10,000 towards highway safety improvements in the locality, that's a recommendation, and that's a sum of money that would be covered in a Section 106 agreement, presumably. Well, outside of that, then, is there anything to stop us doing this report outside or agreed today?
There's nothing.
Pardon?
Through you, Chair. There's no issue of that being carried out outside the scope of this application if you decided to privately commission your own report into this outside the scope of the planning application that members are considering today.
I would be happy to do it.
And I think as long as members are aware that that's a private civil arrangement between parties, then you don't take that into account when you make your decision. You weigh it around in the balance, then you're making a robust decision on the planning application as recommended in the report. And then it's a robust and fair, safe decision.
For the record, you can trust me.
Have we had this moved? I think we have, but we didn't have it seconded. Seconded by Councillor Pinnock. All those in favour, please show. Thank you.
Approved.
Page 159, 3 Valleys, Cold Hill Lane, New Mill.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Nick Hurst, Case Officer for the application. This application seeks the erection of 3 dwellings. The application is brought to committee as the site is allocated as provisional open land and therefore represents a departure. The site benefits from an outline permission for 4 dwellings. The current photo shows the general arrangement of the site being an open field with trees along the eastern boundary. For context, the site is, to my rear is Cold Hill Lane, and just opposite on the other side of the valley is Holmfirth Road. Current photo looking up the site with 3 valleys, the dwelling currently on site, and then Cold Hill Lane along the top. Within the site or on the boundary are a string of trees with these two being protected by tree preservation order. Again, for context, here I'm stood on Holmfirth Road looking at the site with 3 valleys there. I don't know how well it's showing up, but there is a plot 4 indicated here that is not part of the application. It's shown for indicative purposes, potentially for later. The application is for the 3 plots shown clearly here. The dwellings would be accessed via a shared drive from Cold Hill Lane, which would also serve 3 valleys, the existing dwelling. Each dwelling has a garage and private parking, with 1 visitor parking space to be provided and on-site turning. The green areas are garden space, with the darker green being an ecological buffer zone. I'll quickly run through each plot, with this being plot 1, which backs onto Cold Hill Lane. However, following discussions with the applicant, an active frontage has been established onto the roadside. Plot 2 and plot 3 are split-level properties, being single-storey fronting onto the new shared driveway and 2.5 to the rear, with this being the rear of plot 3 as well. A significant difficulty of the site is the levels, which can be demonstrated here, how they'd accommodate it, raising an access there with a typical arrangement of the rear. And here is a photo example of how it could look in the future. The report in front of members outlines the Planning Authority's consideration on the proposal. In summary, while provisional open land, the site benefits from an extant outline permission, and the Council remains unable to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. Furthermore, the site is unallocated in the emerging local plan. Therefore, the principle is considered acceptable. The dwellings are considered visually attractive and would harmonise with the character of the area. There are no concerns relating to other material considerations, including residential amenity and highways. The initial period of advertisement expired on the 27th of February. As a departure, it is necessary for the application to be publicised in a local paper, and officers are awaiting this expiration of this second representation period. To date, 5 representations have been received, raising concerns including design, the impact on neighbours, the local roads, and that this does not accord with the previous outline permission. The representations are fully detailed within paragraph 7.3 of the report and addressed in paragraph 10.4. At this time, officers are supportive of the proposal and therefore recommend approval. This is subject to delegation back to officers to wait for the second representation period to end. If any new material planning considerations are raised, the application will be brought back to members. If no further material planning conditions are raised, it would be approved. Nothing further to add, Chair.
Thank you. Member. Councillor Firth.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Another green field going under concrete. That's what it's about. And Cold Hill Lane is a single track lane, basically. You can't pass 2 cars in certain areas of Cold Hill Lane. It's just was a farm track at one time up to the top of the hill there. I just don't. There's 3 houses down for building here. That field has been used for many years, with farmers rent it for the sheep and one thing and another. You get about 200 bales off it. Now you're going to get nothing off it. It's going to be under concrete, and it's going to put more cars on Cold Hill Lane. There's enough on there now. That really is, have we done an assessment highways on Cold Hill Lane? I doubt it. But as far as I'm concerned, it's not going to get my seal of approval. Thank you.
Councillor Sims and then Councillor Penny.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I think going to get my seal of approval either, because when this field is concreted over, you won't know it. I will tell you about it, but you don't take any heed of these things. We already have problems across that road with water that floods across regular way. because of the dike and all the problems there. This field will be concreted over. There'll be more water, so we're going to get more water down that culvert, straight across the road in New Mill, and flood like it's done last year, year before that. But at this moment in time, we're talking to Environment Agency, we're talking to our highways who are going to try and do something to alleviate that problem. But this is going to exacerbate it more. And I can see that it has extant planning permissions and something will get put there. But I'm not going to agree to it until we make sure that this water course and all that's done, so that the people of New Mill will not have to worry every winter when this happens. Because that's a big soak away, that field, and it's just going to put more weight of water down that road. And it comes down there like a river, you know. You could nearly fish for trout in winter down there. But there we go. So I'm not happy at this moment in time with that, and I'm not going to put my hand up to pass it unless we get some assurance of something being done there.
Thank you, Chair. There are some things I don't understand about this. I've just been looking at the drainage issues. But before that, I mean, the problem is this is a provisional open land site, so the principle we can't do a great deal about. I mean, if it wasn't, then we'd be looking at potential infill, which it certainly isn't. But anyway, so the presumption is that provisional open land sites will get permission unless there's something which prevents it. Now, it does seem to me that as Councillor Firth has said, instead of having a field where the drainage is natural, you have buildings where the drainage isn't. And I just wonder whether it would be possible to put in measures to make sure that the drainage flow is roughly the same as it is at the moment on a grass field. Because what I read in the report, we're talking about the possible use of a pump. I'm not quite sure why that would be necessary, and clearly it then throws it out at the end. I'm also not totally happy about putting top water into the sewer because that's caused trouble in some other places. I think I've had cases in my own ward where it specifically says separate systems of foul and surface water. So I'm not sure whether these issues can be resolved at this stage. So I don't know whether a deferment is appropriate in order to sort that out, unless officers can tell us that it can be sorted out. But the principle, I don't think we can do much about. But this drainage issue, it does need a solution.
Thanks, Chair. Just to come back to give you a little brief history on the building up Calder Lane. Some 30 years ago, there was 2 or 3 houses were given permission to build up Calder Lane. There was quite a bit of quarrying to do to get the footings in. In doing that, there was quite a number of springs were damaged. Those springs went under Huddersfield Road, and in the February of that year, the whole of Huddersfield Road collapsed. At a total cost, I think it was millions it ran into anyway, that somebody had to, I don't know whether the council picked the bill up or the Highways Authority in those days, it might have been West Yorkshire Highways, but it's 30 odd years ago that was caused by the springs in that land, and there's something like 200 springs per acre, you know, in areas like that, and once you start breaking into that land and damage the springs, the water can appear anywhere. I'm just warning you. That's what happened nearly 30 years ago. I'm not saying it could happen again, but I'd be warning you, it needs looking into before anything gets agreed. Councillor Sims is quite right. There is a lot of water around in Newell that didn't used to be. A lot of it's to do with all this building we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, members. We do appreciate your concerns on drainage, and initially they did propose to do a pump. Given the relatively small scale of the site, typically drainage wouldn't be considered in as much detail at this stage of the planning process being dealt with by building control, but we did acknowledge the specific concerns of this site, typically the steepness of it. Therefore, we did say we do not want to pump. We're proposing to put in a condition for them to provide full details of what they are going to do, to look through it, to prove to us sequentially the preferable options of the different options available. Ultimately, though, if they do have to have a pump, they would have to demonstrate that that is the only method reasonable or possible on this site. The condition, it will be imposing the same condition in regards to drainage as put on the outline application.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, as well. I think one of the questions that Councillor Pinnock is asking is about attenuation on the site to limit the flow and keep that to a greenfield rate on the site, and that is certainly something that we would look into on this site, and is also a condition on the outline permission, which it's acknowledged is extant on this site too.
Mr. Pinnock.
Sorry, could I seek clarification on that? Is that something that is a condition on this application, that if we passed it, they would have to do that? Or is it something that will be dealt with at a later stage? I'm not quite clear on that point.
Through you, Chair, it would have to be a pre-commencement condition, because it refers to how you're actually going to build out the site.
Is somebody prepared to move this? Councillor Homewood is moving officer's recommendation. Is that seconded?
Yeah, I'll second that if there's a pre-commencement.
Well, that's part and parcel of the recommendation. Yeah. So all those in favour of the recommendation, officer's recommendation, please show. Three.
It's approved.
Page 175, Green Lane Mill, Green Lane, Home Firth.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Neil Bearcroft and I've acted as case officer on this application. The application seeks the change of use of Green Lane Mill from office to residential. The application has been submitted as a Class O prior notification, which limits the planning matters that can be considered with the proposal. These matters are highways, contamination, flooding and noise from commercial premises. The application is brought to committee at the request of Councillor Patrick, who has also made some further comments which are set out in the update. That's the application site outlined in red. It's located at the junction of Washpit, New Road and Green Lane, which extends all up to Dumford Road at the top end. Washpit Mills is located to the southwest of Holmfirth, further to the north. The site was seen by members earlier today. This is the front of the building. It's 3-storey, constructed of stone, and it's split level. So there's a lower ground floor, and then a first floor. There's also a basement area. This area here was previously used for parking, and then there's another area of parking further down. This is the gable end, and the River Ribble runs adjacent to the site. So the proposal would be to provide 11 two-bedroom apartments split over 3 levels and provide 14 vertical parking spaces and 22 bicycle parking spaces and bin storage in the basement. There'll be no external alterations to the building. In terms of matters for consideration under this type of application, I draw members' attention to the committee update which sets out an assessment of noise impact from commercial premises and which concludes that due to the separation to adjacent commercial uses, the impact is considered to be acceptable. There's no intrusive groundwork, so the impact in terms of contamination is considered to be acceptable. The site is located within flood zone 3 and the applicant has provided a flood risk assessment which has been assessed by the Environment Agency, who raised no objection to the proposal subject to a condition restricting any, preventing any residential use in the basement. In terms of the final matter in relation to highways, I'll now pass you on to my colleague Ryan at Highways Development Management.
Through you, Chair. To summarise the highway section of the report, the development of 11 apartments will generate between 8 and 9 two-way movements in the AM and peak periods, giving a reduction of 4 to 6 two-way movements, respectively. This is in addition to the forecast 38 and 43 two-way AM PM peak movements generated by the recently approved Washpit Mills development, but overall will there be less in total than the current permitted use. The provision of 1 parking space per unit plus 3 visitor spaces, giving 14 in total, is in line with the Council's parking requirements. A 10k contribution towards highway safety improvements in the vicinity of the site via 106 agreement is to be secured. Thank you, Chair.
So just to conclude, the application is recommended for full conditional plan permission, subject to the contribution of £10,000 to provide highway safety enhancements as set out in the committee update. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Patrick.
Thank you, Chair. Page 181 onwards of the report talks about the highway, what the highways assessment by the council officer relates to. Washpit application that was discussed, that was refused. The Washpit application, some of you were involved in that. It was a long, gruelling thing, but you will remember that the first application was refused, largely on the unsuitability of the local highway network, and that first application was dismissed on appeal for the same reasons. The Washpit Mills application has indeed now been approved, but this report fails to recognise that the approved scheme contained fewer dwellings. This report doesn't talk about that. Fewer dwellings than the application that was refused on appeal. The provision of an intermittent footway to one side of Washpit New Road was not the only reason why the committee thought the application, the more recent application, was now acceptable. A reduction in the number of dwellings was a factor, because obviously less dwellings meant less traffic. This application increases the number of dwellings back to a level in line with the one that was refused. Paragraph 10.19 of the officer's report tells us that this site is considered to be sustainable. Is not considered to be sustainable, sorry. It says it's not sustainable. But officers seem to think that the provision of a vehicular activated sign will suffice and overcome the problems. So a flashing sign on Dunford Road, which tells vehicles there's a junction there, is going to solve the problem of all the traffic problems on Washpit New Road. Well, I disagree. In fact, Chair, I'm beginning to despair about some of the suggestions that are coming out from and the agreements made on what constitutes overcoming highways safety problems. I'm starting to think that I must live in a totally different planet, and I shall try not to say too much, otherwise I might get dragged in front of the chief executive. But you know, this council is letting the area down by coming up with suggestions like this. we really need to find some better solutions than a flashing sign, and on that basis, I suggest I would like committee to refuse this on highways grounds. Thank you.
We have David Smith, who's speaking on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon. My name is David Smith and I work for Indigo Planning. I'm speaking on behalf of Priestley Homes in support of this prior approval application for the change of use of Green Lane Mill, which is a vacant office building, to 11 two-bedroom apartments. Your Officers Committee report represents a very thorough and robust assessment which addresses the issues relevant to this application. And on this basis, your officers have recommended that the application is approved and request that you come to the same conclusion today. We acknowledge that there have been some concerns raised about the highways consideration. However, as explained in the officers' report, the 11 apartments will be served by 14 car parking spaces and 22 cycle parking spaces, and this is a policy compliant level of parking. The spaces will be formally laid out prior to occupation of the building as required by the recommended condition. This would be a considerable improvement when compared to retaining the building in office use. The office building was formerly occupied by Coates UK Limited, who employ between 50 and 60 staff. As you will have seen on your site visit earlier today, the parking arrangements serving the building are uncontrolled. And as a result of these factors, the car park was over capacity, and this resulted in on-street parking when Coates UK occupied the building. And this could continue to be the case if the building is retained in office use. The submitted transfer statement demonstrates that the change of use would result in fewer trips to and from the property on the surrounding network, and that there are no overriding traffic and transportation reasons meriting a refusal of the application. Our client has agreed to a £10,000 contribution towards highway safety improvements in the area, which can be spent as officers see fit. And the 22 cycle parking spaces, as I referred to, are an improvement also. So in our opinion, the proposal is considered acceptable from a highways perspective. The application has also been assessed against the other relevant considerations of flooding, contamination and noise. And there is no residential accommodation proposed in the basement of the building, and the supporting flood risk assessment demonstrates that the proposal is therefore acceptable, and the Environment Agency has concurred with this. Local and national policy supports the reuse of vacant buildings for residential use, and the approval of this application would enable the effective reuse of a vacant building, the provision of 11 high-quality apartments with improved provision and control of car parking, and increased provision of cycle parking. And therefore, we request that you support the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Members. Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you, Chair. Can I be a pedant for a moment, please? Because this is an application for prior approval. It's not your average planning application. What I think it would be helpful is, what is the difference between this and an outline planning application? Because it seems to me that's kind of what it is, but it isn't, if you see what I mean. And I'm not clear. I mean, I'm not going to ask why they've done this, but I'd just like to understand what is the difference between this and an outline application, please.
Through you, Chair. So this application is a little bit more like, say, a reserve matters application, where the principle has already been established by the legislation that central government introduced a number of years ago. So the principle of converting the building from office to residential is okay, subject to an assessment of highways, contamination, flooding and noise from commercial premises. So those are the only four matters that we can assess as part of this application, and that's what we've set out in the committee report and the update. So we're looking at those four areas, and it's It's whether members feel that those areas are acceptable.
Thank you. I'm grateful for that. However, tend to agree with a lot of what Councillor Patrick has said, because having been on the Strategic Planning Committee which dealt with the Washpit Mills site, I am very well aware of the issues of traffic on this road, and it does seem to me that we're now back to a situation, albeit not over the same distance of road, where we have the same number of dwellings as was in the application that was refused on appeal. So this all sounds a bit illogical. I would be tempted to move refusal of this, but I won't just at the moment because I'm not absolutely sure of my ground. But I can see the point that is being made locally, that we have here roads that are narrow, which are to be improved to a certain extent as a result of a different application, and which this application can sort of take advantage of. But I'm not convinced that it's right at this stage. I will reserve my position for the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Chair. Well, here's another application in Home Valley South. Rowan Yarns, as it was, that small mill, it's at the bottom of what they call Green Lane and Richgate, and it feeds into Washpit New Road, which, as we all know, is a very narrow road. And I would like to know what highways, how they've come up with the idea that it's okay to go ahead. Because it strikes me as though highways don't go very far. They probably don't go much further than Berry Brow, because they never seem to be able to put a finger on what the problem is. It's always okay. This isn't okay. This is a very narrow road, is Washpit New Road. As we all know, when we sat in this chamber when the guy came up from Bristol. And then, unfortunately, it came again and it was agreed he cut down the housing situation. But add these 11 apartments on, we're back up to the same amount of houses that he was thrown out in this council chamber by the gentleman, the inspector from Bristol. So I want to know why we've suddenly decided that the Washpit New Road is just wide enough. They've given us a formula for the cars. How they come up with these formulas, I don't know, because people drive cars in and out when they feel like it, not when the formula says they've got to do. You look at Richgate. Richgate is narrower, just slightly narrower than Washpit New Road. The other one is Green Lane, which we locals call the Snake. That goes up and round Cartworth, below Cartworth Moor. That's the other way out, if you want to go out that way, and that's even worse because, again, there's lots of houses and cars parked on that road before you get into Holmfirth. Going on Washpit New Road, you've got Dunford Road and all the parking down there, which is dangerous from the point of view and a nuisance to people coming up and down because you can only pass one car at once, and if you get a bus in the way, then you've got a problem. So we're only trying to tell people how it is, and apparently nobody's listening. I've said this before about our planning officers and people. Nobody listens. They just go ahead and do what they want. It's a case of let's build some houses. Never mind what it's going to cost later. But at later dates, it's such as me, it has to go around trying to sort problems out. But I'm like Councillor Patrick. I am not going to support this. I've no way I'm going to support this. And if the rest of the committee think the way I do, they won't either. Thank you.
Councillor Homewood.
Yeah,
Councillor.
I've heard what my colleagues have had to say. The bit I was just maybe a bit of clarity on here is that when this was being presented to us, I think in terms of the highways and the traffic implication, the view's been given is the comparison against the existing usage, which is so the properties actually produce less traffic than the existing usage. I don't know how long that building hasn't been used for, but I'm presuming
and I don't know anything about this previous application, but I'm presuming the previous application took into consideration the current usage of the building at the time and the traffic that created. So, if I'm understanding it correctly, whilst we might have some concerns about the traffic implications and the highways implications, what we're saying, as in looking at this application in isolation, if we're looking at a change of use, we're actually reducing the overall traffic impact. So whilst actually in reality, we might be seeing more vehicles there, from a strict position as the way that you're presenting it, you're suggesting it's a reduction. So I'd just like, I suppose, some clarity is from a decision-making point of view, that if this building is not in use at the moment and as such is not creating any traffic, can we not be looking at it, should we not be looking at it from the perspective of it not being used, or do we have to look at it from the perspective of the amount of traffic that was being generated when it was in use as an employment building?
Through you, Chair. Yes, the building's got an existing use as a B1 office, and they provided a transport assessment to detail that the office has, I think, 14 two-way movements in the AM peak and 13 in the PM peak. So as that existing use, that could come into use tomorrow as an office and have its associated traffic and parking arrangements. So this would be then a change of use, and the information that's been provided details that would be a lesser amount of predicted movements to what would be if it was retained as an office use, and if that came into use tomorrow.
Yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Well, we're going to be a laughing stock here, aren't we? You know, the factor here is that you're going to increase the amount of traffic that the inspector said was too much. When the inspector looked at Washpit site, he knew all about this mill we're talking about. He'd assessed everything, and the factor was that he refused it mainly on highway grounds. And here we come now and saying, well, it's all right. We're all right now to put, you know, another 14, 15, 16 cars on this road. It's okay. Now, you know, well, I don't want this inspector to say. I think I'll be writing to him because I really want to know the nitty-gritty, because we've had to let Washpit go ahead by this reduction of houses, right, to accommodate the planning permission to be given. I would think, and I wouldn't blame them if the Washpit mill lot come back if you pass this and say, hey, what are you doing? You know, you won't let us do it, but now you're letting them do it down the road, and it's actually more than what the inspector thought to allow. So, you know, where are we? We're just, you know, we're not doing things right here at all, I don't think. I'm not going to support it. In fact, I'm going to ask for it to be refused. So I move refusal.
It's tricky, isn't it? Because we are at a site that has a protracted planning history, both the application in front of you and its neighbour at the Washpit site. This site, yeah, it was last used as an office. You do have to take that into account. What you have to assess is the likely fallback scenario. What's likely to happen at that site? Not the maximum it could do, but the likelihood. And I think we are saying likely it could come back into an office use. It's not unrealistic to expect that. So it's probably about equals in terms of traffic generation. Pardon? Agreed movement patterns would be different. People would be coming in and people would be going out at different times. Accepted. That's why it isn't purely take it as an office use and convert it to resi. It's fine. You are allowed to assess highways. But what you're talking about really is the wider scenario of Washpit Mills and the planning history there. And when the planning permission was refused by the committee, resolved to refuse and then appealed, and then the inspector endorsed the reasons for refusal of the committee, the strategic committee, He found that there was insufficient information at that time to justify the fallback use of the Washpit Mills site, and in his view on that, he assessed that the highway impact on that local network would have been significant above what the fallback of Washpit Mills was. Well, you step forward, they did some evidence to overcome that by doing a highway assessment, looking at the actual movements and the junctions, and that evidence was put forward into a revised application that then Strategic Planning Committee, after a big debate, did accept and did approve. And yes, it was for a less intensive development than the appeal scheme. One of the main areas was, yes, there were less houses, there were also less apartments, but there was less office and hotel uses. So I don't think it's quite fair to say that if you approve 11, if you were to accept 11 apartments here, that it would come back up to an equitable split. It would add 11 more units and 11 more units worth of movement onto Washpit, but you are, as Washpit, getting an upgrade of that track at Washpit New Lane. It's going to have a footway, it's going to be lit, and that's all done under a Section 278 agreement paid for by the developer. So that does improve it. And then if you come to this application, which you've got to assess today, why was the last application refused? It was refused because there wasn't enough parking. Well, they've come in with that now, and the question to members is that sufficient? Have you got enough parking and visitor parking and cycle storage and electric charging points and all that to overcome the issues of previous refusal? And if you have, you might have to accept it, and if you haven't, then you could take a view on highway matters, because that's what you're allowed to do with this type of application. I hope that helps.
Yes, Councillor.
Yeah. I think we are all concerned about highways matters, but I think the information that we've just received is very pertinent to this, that if this building is going to be used going forward, then it is going to generate traffic, and the evidence suggests that the amount of traffic generated by residential use is not necessarily going to be any greater or more detrimental than if it is used as an office or whatever, retail space, whatever else you could use it for. So on those grounds, I would support the application.
Councillor Bellamy.
Right. Firstly, I'll second Councillor Sims on unless Donald's already done it. Parking spaces has just been brought up, as we've been told. 14, I believe, for 11 two-bedroom apartments. Well, my reckoning, most of them apartments will have 2 cars, so where's the other 8 going to go? Because I really don't think 14 parking spaces is anywhere near enough for 11 parking spaces.
Yes, Councillor Firth.
Thank you. This is the last time I'm going to speak on this one. When there were officers there, I mean, I've worked in Holmfirth, lived in Holmfirth for a long, long time, and I used to go down there quite often, Washpit Mills, this place we're on about now, Rowan Yarns. There was never more than 2 cars there in a day. Sometimes there was only 1, and this was an office. And what people generally do in case of offices, they car share anyway. And it's only taken up in the morning from, 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and they're not moving between 8 o'clock and 5 o'clock. So, you know, that doesn't wash with me at all. If you want to sort of, if the gentleman wants to agree to it, then I'll ask him back when we've got problems. He can come and let me sort them out. It's as simple as that. Because there's going to be problems. There will be problems. That's why the guy from London said no, from Bristol said no, too many cars. And now we've got 11 apartments, which I reckon is about 22 cars, 2 per apartment, and if there's 3 people living there, they can all drive, there'll be 3 cars. It's as simple as that. You know, you've got to use a little bit of grey matter on this job. Just don't go along with whatever everybody says, because I don't believe anything anybody says nowadays, to be honest. Only believe half of what you see and nothing of what you hear. Thank you.
We've had mover and a second for refusal, but we haven't had a reason for the refusal. Could you give it to our solicitor here?
You mentioned not being sustainable, light on parking. Not sufficient parking spaces. Yeah. As a consequence... right, okay.
Just a small point, but it was mentioned on the bus that some of the parking spaces were, how can I describe it, tight. Well, it's. I think that comes under the heading of inadequate parking facilities on the site, not on the road, on the site.
Yes, through you, Chair. I think members are saying that because of the location, it's likely that more people would have cars, and in that situation, you'd wish to see more parking on site, and that you think that the 14 spaces shown both for residents and visitor parking is insufficient to meet the needs of the residents and therefore wouldn't be in the best interest of highway safety. Thank you, Chair.
It's been moved and seconded for refusal. All those in favour, please show. Against?
Application is refused.
The Fairway Fixed B, page 187.
Thank you, Chair. The application seeks the erection of a two-storey, three-bedroom dwelling adjacent 14 The Fairway and was requested to committee by former member Jean Calvert. The site was seen by members earlier today and is within a residential area on unallocated land. The site on this location plan is in the top right-hand corner there, sort of in the north-eastern corner. This is number 14. It's the site next door. There's a woodland around this side and to the rear. The following a few photographs of the site. This is a detached garage which would be removed to facilitate the dwelling. That's number 14 to the side. You can see the trees. This is looking further to one side, the other side of the trees, and this is a slightly longer view with the garage showing the change in levels where it drops away to the rear. The proposed dwelling would be built in line with number 14, and turning would be provided to the front with 2 vehicular parking spaces. Garden space would be located to the rear. The dwelling will be split level, 2-storey, utilising the roof space, and then a lower ground floor to the rear elevation. In terms of matters for consideration, sufficient parking and access can be achieved for the development, and acceptable separation distances to residential properties can also be achieved. A boundary fence has been erected along the boundary of number 14 to prevent any harmful overlooking from that property. However, with regards to visual amenity, planning officers have concerns that the proposal represents a cramped form of development which would be out of keeping with the character of the local area due to the plot size is considered to be constrained and the predominant character of the local area is for dwellings within large plots. The application will therefore fail to respect the character in the local area and is considered to be detrimental to visual amenity. The application is therefore recommended for refusal as set out in the published committee report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Members, you'll have seen on your site visit this morning that the application site is next to a large bungalow. This is occupied by the applicant's disabled father, disabled brother and mother. In 2013, planning permission was granted for the erection of 2 detached houses on the site of the bungalow and this current application site. That permission was not taken up. Instead, permission was subsequently granted and implemented to extend the bungalow, in part to provide appropriate accommodation for the applicant's disabled brother. That left the existing redundant, unsightly garage and land which forms the application site. Living in the proposed house will enable the son to be on hand to better look after his father and brother. The officers consider that the proposal fails to respect the predominant character of the area. I would ask you to note that the plot has a wide frontage of some 22 metres. It is not narrow, but very similar to that of many others nearby. The house will have a width of 8 metres, which is what might be considered of average width. It will be set back approximately 10 metres from the pavement. It will be set away from the bungalow by a generous distance of some 5.5 metres. It will be set down on the site so that its roof line is below that of the bungalow. Materials and design are entirely appropriate. I would respectfully suggest that the officers' concerns about impact on the character of the area are not such as to justify the refusal of the application. It is not a conservation area, but an area containing a variety of dwellings on a variety of plot sizes. This proposal will merely add to the mix. I would ask that rather than refuse the application, you delegate the decision to officers to approve. Thank you, Chair.
Members. Councillor Sokol.
Yes, Chair. We all seen this site this morning on site visit. Yeah, I accept what Malcolm Sayer said. They have a extended family and they're looking after a disabled family member. And well, if you look into this site, where there is a garage which is going to be demolished, it looks very derelict site there. I think the proposed building will improve the area there, but again, I think it would be a lot better if they come back with a bungalow type building rather than this 3-story building, yeah? So I think it would be wise if we defer this application and give the chance to the applicant to come back some suitable building which won't change the character of the area. So that's what I have to say, but up to members anyway. Thank you.
No further submissions, no? It's been moved and seconded. So it's the reverse of the officer's recommendation for approval. Right.
Yes, through you, Chair, Councillor Sokol has put forward for the application to be deferred for a different designed property on the site, and it's been suggested that this be a bungalow, not the 2- and 3-story property shown on the plan, to see if that can better fit within the area, and for officers to present an amended plan or the original plan back to committee for them to assess further. Thank you, Chair.
All those in favour, please show.
It's deferred for the reasons set out by the planning officer.
Page 199, and it's again the Fairway Fixby.
Thank you, Chair. This application is the change of use of... no, wrong plan. Yeah, right, try again. Number 46. There we go. Right. The application seeks the change of use of land outlined in red on the plan in front of you from a woodland area to domestic curtilage to associate with the driveway of number 46, which is outlined in blue here and borders the site. The application has been requested by Councillor Homewood. The site was seen by members earlier today and was in the residential area on unallocated land. The site is located within a woodland covered by a preservation order which extends to the rear of number 46. Here are a few photographs of the site. These are the trees that are currently on the site. This is the entranceway that's already in place at the property. All these trees are protected by a woodland preservation order. This is looking back within the site, roughly at where the position of the drive would be. So this is the proposal to install a driveway here with a turning head at one end, and the trees are indicated on that plan. In terms of matters for consideration, highway arrangements are considered to be acceptable, and the applicant has provided an arboricultural report and method statement to detail how the drive would be formed whilst protecting the health of the trees. These documents have been assessed by the Council's arboricultural officer. However, there are some concerns in relation to a potential harm to the trees by the works, and it is considered that the works to form the drive would have a level of harm to those trees. Planning officers are also concerned that the formation of domestic driveway through the woodland, which extends to the north west, would be detrimental and would harm the functions of the green corridor, which the woodland also forms along the rear of the properties, and in turn be detrimental to visual amenity and fail to accord with design policies. The application is therefore recommended for refusal as set out in the committee report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Mohammed Anwar, who's speaking on behalf of the applicant.
So, in regards to the land we purchased adjacent to our back garden, it is our wish to maintain this land as we do our back garden. The land is currently used as a dumping ground and attracts a lot of litter from people passing by. As we have lived at this address for over 35 years, I remember when the land was once used for the site offices, for storage, etc., whilst nearby houses were being constructed. Hence, when purchasing the land, we didn't think there would be any problem using the land after we did purchase it. It appears we were slightly misled when purchasing the land. There was no mention of any restrictions or TPOs, etc. It's also a little concerning as to why, when the application was submitted back in April 2017, did the Planning Authority ask us for the additional information, the tree survey by the specialist firm, an arboriculturist report, a computer survey by a specialist surveying firm, all of the details of all the type of driveway to be constructed, for it then to be refused simply on principle. As far as I'm aware, the tree officer was perfectly happy with the information we provided. The materials to be used to lay down the driveway is specially designed to protect the land and the trees around. As there is currently a problem with the parking on our street, we are a family of 6, of which 4 are drivers. As similar situations for our neighbours, we're having to park on the street outside our house. This has been noticed to cause an issue to our neighbours when they're reversing out of their drive. This is an issue we believe we can resolve by using this land as a driveway and taking away the need to park on the street. For this reason, as well as a shared desire to have this land kept clean, it is our neighbours' wish. It is also our neighbours' wish for the proposal to be approved. It's also a shared opinion amongst whoever we have spoken with to be in favour, and that it would be an improvement on the local area if it was to be maintained. Should we be allowed to carry out the work, we would be happy to manage the land, employing appropriate people as required, and would keep it tidy as it is used as a dumping ground currently. And we believe it would be improving and benefiting the visual amenity. We hope you understand the benefits to not only ourselves but also to the surrounding area, as well as our neighbours, should the proposal be approved. Thank you.
Members. Councillor Walker.
Quite a specific point, really, but it was something that I raised whilst we were on the visit this morning, which is the fact that conifers have already been planted to form a hedge. And this was raised as an objection in 7.2, the final bullet point. And looking at the later responses from officers, I don't really see a response to that, because I do think that will create quite a significant impact on the visual benefit of that site, and an ecological impact as well, because that hedge will grow and it is not part of the natural woodland. So, I think this is part of how this proposed development would damage the existing woodland.
Through you, Chair, the planting of the conifer trees doesn't form development, and that can be done without the need of any form of plan permission. So that can be carried out perfectly acceptably from a planning side of things.
Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you, Chair. Just simply to agree with the officer's assessment on this and to move their recommendation, because I think it's a completely inappropriate use of the site for whatever reason. This isn't the answer.
Councillor Homewood.
Yeah, obviously I referred this to the committee. One of the reasons that I did, and I know it was mentioned just then, was just about what guidance the applicants were given. And I obviously don't know start to finish what happened, but I just find it a little bit strange that if the view was, and I can understand why the view was reached, that it's not really an appropriate use of that land, why applicants might have been pointed towards doing a tree survey and so on, because to me it just seems that potentially was a waste of resource for them to do that. So I don't know whether that is what happened or whether that's just maybe misunderstanding, but maybe that's a learning point that we could perhaps give people a bit better direction at the outset, because it just seems, I can understand from their point of view that they wouldn't have gone through that process if they'd been told that. The other thing I was going to say, I think generally it's a difficult one, but I appreciate what you said there. I think, for the purpose of it which is parking, you could just park on the road there. There's no houses there on Gilderoy Lane and walk through the back of the thing to the house if you wanted to anyway. So I'm just not. I'm not seeing that really it's demonstrated a necessity to deliver it. So I'm not sure it's the right thing.
It's been raised that moving officer's recommendation. I thought it hasn't been seconded though. Councillor Sokol.
Yeah, Chair. Yeah, I accept this is a woodland. It's a nice piece of land there, looking there. It's good there. But sometimes we have to look into the community need and community benefit. Yeah. I think it been said the owner of the property number 40 said he got quite a few cars. He want to take off from the road and park on the back side of his house, making through this access on there. But I don't know if the access is get well screened by growing up these conifer. I think there will be no harm to the area, but still up to the members. I go along with members anyway.
Through you, Chair, if I can just come back to some points that Councillor Homewood was raising about the information submitted in support of the application. On our website, we set out a validation checklist which sets out what kind of information should be supported if certain issues are likely to be material in the consideration of an application. So when the application initially came in, there was no arboricultural report about what impact the driveway and the works there would have on protected trees, and therefore to inform the application we did require to overcome initial objections that there wasn't information to demonstrate that information. So that has overcome a potential reason for refusal on direct impact on trees. Similarly, because it's an undeveloped woodland area at the moment, there were issues regarding whether ecological harm would occur from the development proposed, and again that's on the validation checklist, and again that wasn't something submitted with the application. The submission of the preliminary ecological assessment has overcome that issue. So the reason before you today has taken account of those matters and has taken account of the expense the applicant has gone to, but that is to inform the application. And if there had been pre-application a formal pre-application submission, that is the kind of documents we would have expected to have been submitted with an application. Thank you, Chair.
So somebody, it's been moved officer's recommendation. Is there a seconder for that? You second that. All those in favour, please show. Against?
Application is refused.
Finally, page 207, and it's Newsham Mills, Ruth Street, Newsham.
Thank you, Chair. Nigel Hunston, case officer for this application. The application is for listed building consent to remove fire-damaged debris from within the walls of Newsham Mill. Newsham Mill is situated on Ruth Street to the north of it and on Hart Street. It's the site of a former mill building which covered the entire site, as you can see there. But what is standing now are the remains of a 4-storey mill complex, weavers' sheds which are around there, freestanding tower, office buildings at this corner. There has been previous permissions on this site for residential development in the past. Following a catastrophic fire in 2016, the building was extremely fire damaged. The resultant factors were that at the time the building had to be made safe by the fire brigade and the demolition contractor on site, which was brought in. And basically the 4-storey mill was pushed inwards to first floor level. All the roof and supporting structure above that were all collapsed. Equally, the single-storey weaver's shed, which is to the end at the junction of Hart Street and Ruth Street, was similarly damaged, but it was more damaged by the contractors going into the site to create a safe access. Within the site is all the rubble, which is fire damaged and unusable because extreme heat, as shown in the first photograph, makes the stone friable. So in terms of using for rebuilding works, it cannot be used. However, there are other parts of the building within it, such as cast iron columns, inscribed lintels, which could be used as a further redevelopment. The site has been protected, there has been breakages into the site, and it remains really insecure and unsafe. You will note from the report that there has been representations from the local community which relate to the reuse of the material, the security, how the removal of the debris can be done without damaging the mill building any further, and also what the future of the site is. The details of the method of removal of the demolition material is at best sketchy, and the reason for that is it's a bit of a chicken and egg. You can't get into the building because it's unsafe. You can't do structural reports, so it's hard to come up with a method statement at this time. However, we are proposing that a condition is placed on that a full method statement is produced, which will look not only at how the site will be cleared, but what method of security for the cast iron columns and stone, which can be reused, as mentioned before, will be stored and prevent further theft. It is, however, shown on the drawing that there will be 2 accesses. One will be created through the 4-storey mill to the rear, or what was the 4-storey mill, between openings which are currently block worked up, and they will be opened and machinery will be allowed in, and equally through the back of the weaving shed as well. These are the areas concerned. However, the method statement may decide that one of these or the other next to it may be the most appropriate, but it will be in that area and it will only be a section of blockwork wall removed. We are in early negotiations with the owner again for the redevelopment of the site, and that is very early. However, we cannot move these forward in its current situation with this debris in place. due to the need for site surveys and further works. So it is proposed that we grant listed building consent subject to the condition of a method statement for the clearance. Thank you, Chair.
We have Diane Sims.
Thank you. I'm Diane Sims. I'm on behalf of the News and Mills campaign speaking today, and we're part of News and Ward Community Forum, who are the neighbourhood planning authority for Newsham. We responded to the original application, and really my concern is that what we raised then is still the case. We commented on the lack of detail in the application, and we said we didn't think a decision should be made on it until residents and other stakeholders had the opportunity to comment on the method of works. And appreciate the efforts that have been made by the officers to get more information since then, and we have had a bit more information. But still those questions we raised, in particular about how the existing structures will be safeguarded during the works. As one example, that's not really been answered. And although we appreciate the sort of chicken and egg situation, I think it's not right to approve something when citizens don't have the opportunity to comment on the detail of that, really, and that's my concern. And just to say, we don't have any objection to removal of debris, but we want to be clear about what we mean by debris and what can and can't be done, which we've also said in our response. But if that decision on the method statement is delegated to officers, that means effectively citizens have no right of reply about that. So I guess in a way I've come with the question as to, is it possible to defer until we do have a method statement, or is there any basis by which one of those conditions could be about consulting the local community about the method statement before works begin? And obviously it's really important in terms of protecting the building that we know exactly what can be done and what can't, but it's also really important in terms of the people who live there and who've lived through that fire and who have lived through watching the building be further damaged by contractors. It's really important for them and for their trust with the council that they know what can happen and what can't, really. And that's one of the things we're most keen on, really, is that we keep that good working relationship between the community and the council officers who are trying to find a way forwards in what is a very difficult situation, really. So I guess I've come to ask the question about, if we get approval today, by what means people who care about these buildings and people who are affected by the site can still have a right to comment, and if they can't, is it possible to defer the decision until we have more details in a method statement?
Thank you. Members. Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you, Chair. I think there is a degree of urgency of dealing with this, because having viewed the building this morning, it does seem to me that the sooner we get what's inside sorted out, the better. And I would agree that I'm sure local residents would like a speedy, or as speedy as is appropriate, solution to this problem. It does seem to me that because there is in the proposed permission, there is a method statement has got to be agreed, and I would propose that we approve that, but ask that it come back to committee once the method statement has been agreed, so that that can be, the decision can then be seen. I don't know if that's appropriate, but it seems to me that would A, get the permission moving, and B, have it available for the public to see what's happening.
The Homewood.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't know what the procedure is here, but would it not just be possible, and that might be the right thing to do as well, but obviously timings is part of this, and I just wondered whether this method statement would be something that would be shared with ward councillors who could then discuss that with the community. I presume they attend the forum that she's referring to and have regular contact with them. Maybe they could be the conduit there. I don't know exactly what discussions you have with ongoing discussions with the community groups. But
Mr. Sims.
Thank you, Chair. Is the applicant a builder or is it demolition? Do we know?
Through you, Chair, the applicant is an agent acting on behalf of a developer who was the one who secured planning permission previously on the site. It's still the same one, although we're in negotiations with them and we don't know where that's going to take us at the moment.
Yeah, I agree with some of what's been said, but I also think I didn't go on site this time. I was on up there a few weeks ago, and I'm sure the people around there go to bed worrying themselves to death every night of what's going to happen in that mill as it is now. It's an eyesore, it's a big fire risk still, and it's a risk for other things to happen there. So I think there's got to be a bit of common sense over this building. It's gone a long time, as long as I can remember, this mill's gone on. Something will have to be done with it. As our conservation man says, there are some objects in there that could be reclaimed, but at the end of the day, is this building ever going to get put back to what you expect it to be put back to? And I think the answer is no there, to be honest. Something will have to be done with it. There'll have to be a best of a bad job in using whatever stone, because once it's been fired up, you're quite right, it's beggared really. It'll just crumble. So we do need a common sense solution to this. And I'll back up that we need a method statement of what's going to happen, how it's going to happen, what times, because whatever the public think, whatever method statement there is, there'll be dust, there'll be noise, there'll be rats running here and there as soon as all that lot's disturbed. And you know, that nobody will be able to stop that. That will happen. So I just think something really needs doing urgent, and I think this committee ought to push ahead to try and make that happen. Get the method statement there, and then see where we are from there. But it's urgent, I think. It's accident waiting to happen there again.
And there was at least one of the lintels across the windows that was cracked. It was looking, so it does not look very stable. I must admit. So where are we? Have we had a proposer and seconded to implement? Yes.
Through you, Chair. Through you, Chair. If listed building consent is granted with the condition as proposed for the method statement, Councillor Pinnock was asking whether the method statement or the details submitted for the method statement be brought back to committee. So that will have to come in as its own separate submission. So what that part of the resolution would be that the subsequent application for the discharge of the method statement is brought back to committee. Is that?
I think that would satisfy the point that was made by the member of the public, and I take the point that the experience that they've gone through was pretty traumatic, and I think it seems good practice to me to involve the people who were involved in that occurrence. So that's my reasoning.
All those in favour then, please show. Thank you. That finishes the meeting.